There you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Chaco. First off, the presentation before me. So the idea is be everywhere, turbocharge your comms to engage a hybrid workforce. This will make more sense when I explain what is Appspace and what we do. So today's agenda is effectively defining that workplace experience and how do we approach workplace experience. I will also share some insights and trends and some of the challenges, what is mostly the problem for internal comms. Probably you share a lot of them since you participate to such events and allowing you to also network with your colleagues. But we actually conducted a survey last year, so we have some, let's say, actual information coming from a large customer base. So this is me, Chaco. It's actually my last name, but everybody calls me Chaco because it's easier to pronounce in Europe. I have a Turkish background, but I live in France, Lyon. And I work at Appspace as a senior enterprise account executive. I actually started at BZ. Some of you are familiar with it also since the last intranet event in Berlin. BZ is the company that focuses more on digital workplace or the intranet, and Appspace focuses more on the hybrid workplace or physical workplace. So the fusion is actually quite exciting for the industry because it has a more holistic, let's say, approach to the workplace experience. So what does that mean? It's a very fancy word, right? Why don't you just call it intranet? Well, the difference is, as I said, it is a more holistic approach, and it differs from intranet or employee experience because it also includes things that you mostly don't expect from an intranet. So first off, systems and tools inside this workplace experience ecosystem. That's the basics. Technology, so all of you have some sort of technology, be it SharePoint or other vendors offering you projects or products. So you basically have it, and I'll be honest, there's fantastic products in the market. I think there's around 60 vendors, and the industry is quite saturated. But is it enough? Not really. That's why there are so many conferences, and people take flights to change countries to listen to me talking. So the second one matters because of that as well. Spaces and places. Well, this one is more about, let's say, oh, is there fire alarm or? No, right? Oh, I got scared for a moment. So spaces and places. You got the technology, you got the intranet, or however you, let's say, approach the workplace. What do you do with that? Is it applicable to hybrid working? Is it applicable to remote working, which is more and more popular these days? So those are questions that you should be asking to yourself. And I'm sure you are already, right? Post-COVID, so many people wanting to go back or stay at home, or some of them preferring hybrid working. Isn't intranet enough for that? So you need definitely some additional tools or applications or implementations in your work environment to support those demands. Lastly, communications, people and culture. So lots of companies think, okay, I will buy an intranet and it will solve all of my problems. But mostly, or oftentimes, it actually becomes another burden or notification to the end user. So instead of making their lives easier, they will just receive another notification, maybe another form to fill in. So it can really have that opposite effect than what you actually expect. So let's then see what the workplace trends are. What do the employees actually say? And this will be based on that report that I just mentioned. And it's nothing surprising, to be honest with you. If we check some of the stats, we will see 73% of employees now work in either hybrid or fully remote setting. So I actually call it the elephant in the room, typically, because there's the demand and there's the fact that people are wanting to stay at home, and you're trying to engage them to, bring them back to the office. So that is a challenge, and everybody's aware of it. So secondly, 32% are hoping to stay remote long term. It used to be, okay, this is a temporary solution, so we will let them stay at home. It will change anyway, but we're slowly realizing that these are not temporary solutions anymore. And lots of companies have contracts now, where, including mine, by the way, I work remotely, which say, yeah, this employee is entitled to 100% remote work, and they cannot change that. So this is a demand that needs to be addressed for a long term, right? Thirdly, 63% are much more willing to work with a company offering flexibility in terms of working location. So this is more about the great resignation. Lots of companies panicking now, trying to find a solution not to lose their talent. So these are mostly the basics, let's say, that you're probably aware of. And the issues that the businesses are facing: communication. Now that you have some of your colleagues at home, some of them working hybrid, how do you expect to reach out to them? And we work with lots of internal comms, and they want everybody to read every single news. So lots of push approach, push attitude, lots of notifications to see, and it's really overwhelming sometimes for some end users, to an extent that they can end up even blocking or somehow putting the employee app on silent. So those are challenges to consider, because now that people are home, they don't have a boss or a manager looking over their shoulder if they're actually reading. So they're not forced to pretend to work. So it's really, really easy to be losing the concentration, let's say. And the in-office experience as well. Now that the companies are trying to call back the colleagues, they don't have anything additional to their pre-COVID, let's say, working environment. For example, wayfinding or space reservation. Lots of you probably went back to the office post-COVID, and you got into a room having a meeting, thinking that nobody will use it, and suddenly in the middle of it, there's someone, hey, I actually was gonna use this, and you're like, okay, I didn't know. So that's not pleasant. I can be just in my living room and having the same meeting from home. Why would I wanna go to the office? So these type of challenges. And thirdly, the unapproved tools and processes. Funny, we actually have an example from a company that experienced a merger. So after that merger, there were two tools for communication, day-to-day communication. Some of the colleagues were on Slack, some of them were on Teams, some of them were using WhatsApp. So it's a nightmare, especially for the internal comms, if you really want to create that information channel, the communication channel. So what's the solution then? Not to be cheesy, but I believe ours is the best solution. And I have some solid reasons for it. But first off, our solution, the Appspace intranet and the other tools, but let me start with the intranet. It is built for Microsoft 365. So it has its pros and cons. If you don't have Microsoft today, let's say, you cannot use Appspace intranet. This is something that we're working on. We're trying also to enable it to other type of platforms, such as Google. But the pro is you cannot get the best of your Microsoft investment if you're not using BZ. And the reason why I say it is native to your Microsoft environment. So you basically install, by the way, not to create confusion, BZ, Appspace intranet, they are interchangeable. So basically you install it inside your Microsoft tenant, and the whole operation takes 2 hours. And from performance perspective, you will have the fastest intranet, except if you build your own SharePoint, just like Tetra Pak explained previously. So we don't use templates, web parts. It's a complete product that you install and it's ready to go. And plus, you don't care about the whole Microsoft technology behind. Matt was explaining he has to deal with Teams, Power Automate, Microsoft Forms, etc. So it's like plumbing. Not a lot of people like plumbing. If you like plumbing, you can have a great plumbing system in your home. But otherwise, you can call an expert and they can do the whole pipelines for you, right? And that is the approach that we have. We offer you that complete workplace that is ready to go. And the support that you get from us is mostly about creating that branding, look and feel, or your internal company structure. How are you going to integrate that to your workplace environment? So you already start a couple of steps ahead of your, let's say, other companies using other solutions. And that is why we also have an award-winning UX that doesn't need training. It's really intuitive, so the whole idea is based on getting work done with 2 or 3 clicks. Actually, our chief product officer is a sociologist, so he's not a tech guy, but he cares more about how am I going to engage the end user and how can I make it exciting for, let's say, my user base instead of putting more tools and expecting it to magically be adapted. So that's the difference that we have, and it also brings us lots of awards too. We have Glencore, for example, in the conference room, and we had a similar event in Berlin in June, and we earned an award for the best customer journey with them. Glencore is a very large company. Some of you are familiar with it. I talked to some of you last night. And 2/3 of their employees are also based on, let's say, frontline. So it's a very complex structure, but we were able to also get that award based on customer journey, also thanks to the UX that we have, that centralized approach that the intranet has to offer. Thirdly, the personalized employee experience, targeted news and information. Well, this is also very, very important to offer personalized interface to every single employee if you want your tool to be effectively used. I will elaborate further on this. And the seamless integration with third-party tools. I talked about Microsoft and how fragmented it is. You have so many tools, and each one of those have different interfaces. So already integrating or making a workplace based on that is a challenge, but nobody only uses Microsoft. You have third-party tools, you have HR tools to create, let's say, time-off requests. And now you need to change to that environment. And today, the attention cycle is so short that if you switch to 2-3 environments, then you're probably lost. You're looking at your phone. You're going to YouTube. So that is why we're able to integrate those third-party tool workflows via our own connector, and that is how you ensure that your employee stays in a central place and they know that this is where I need to be. So that's the difference. And reach employees where they work, as in Glencore example, mobile, digital signage, etc. That is something that we do also very well. And thinking beyond your intranet, this is where it becomes more relevant. So you have the intranet. I already said intranet isn't enough. So what more? What else do we offer? So communications mobile, employee app, or the mobile app. We have Android and iOS native mobile app that also has the same let's say, power of targeting and personalization. So you make sure if you're a frontline first company that your frontline employees are also integrated into that working environment and working culture. But it's not enough. Sometimes there are companies that have even worse challenges, let's say. We recently onboarded an aviation company, and 90% of their employees, they don't even have access to mobile. They just work on, let's say, ground services. So how are you going to engage them? They don't even have a company mobile phone, not to, I mean, forget about the desktop. So that is where you also need to think about the digital signages, the screens in the, let's say, the break rooms, the lunch rooms, and you need to make them also relevant. You cannot just put there random content. People develop habits really quickly and start ignoring technology. I think Google is a good example. When Google was showing the first 3 results as ads, people quickly developed the habit of just looking at the 4th one. Or the Amazon, right? You have the ads when you look for something, and suddenly you have that habit. So personalization and correctly targeting the content is very important. And that's why Appspace platform has the power of centrally targeting any content, sending it to digital signage, intranet, mobile phone. That way your internal comms is very empowered. And same applies to check-in and out, or visitor management, booking rooms and spaces. All of this, being able to do it centrally from a single platform is unmatched in the industry. And that is why, again, I call that it's the best solution to go if you plan to centralize your workplace environment. So this is a summary of how do we, let's say, integrate different tools to our stack. You will see the Appspace platform at top, and workplace communication and workplace management. This can look scary. Now you can be thinking, oh wow, okay, so we're gonna have to pay for all of this, although we don't use all of this. Not at all. The whole idea is to facilitate the rollout and allow you to, let's say, create a reasonable roadmap. So you can start by having the intranet and maybe next year the digital signages. And the cool thing is we have the future parity. So we don't duplicate information. We don't duplicate notifications either, which is really, really annoying sometimes, right? You get a notification in SharePoint, another one in Teams, somebody's writing in Slack, and another person somewhere else. So it allows you to really channel information and target it correctly. So moving on, personalize the user experience. I will go back to the intranet example, and here perhaps it's tough to see, but you're seeing two interfaces that belongs to the same intranet. But the power of it, let's say on the user level, is that the news for one employee, let's talk about myself, based in Lyon, it will be completely personalized for me. So I will have a different intranet. For, let's say, the news, the top-down information, I will see stuff about maybe the last meeting we had in Lyon, maybe the Salesforce leadership, or anything about France or the projects that I work in. Whereas Josh, being based in Barcelona, he will see stuff about marketing. So that will be completely personalized for him. And another thing is we allow you to have different base languages. So maybe Josh will see everything in Spanish while I see it all in French. So that is also very powerful to keep the intranet relevant for everyone. Sometimes companies, they have one base language, but maybe their colleagues in Czech Republic aren't really keen. Or I can give the French example. No, but French people don't really like English, right? So yeah, it's not the best. So that is why maybe on user level already you have some engagements or investments, but on the intranet level, you also need that granularity. So that is why we have this function we call global and local, allowing you to also have multiple intranets under the umbrella of one global intranet. So those local branches, they will not only have their own branding, as in the example, different colors, fonts, look and feel. They will have a different base language. They will have completely different look and feel. And some of the features you can also allocate to the local administrators, such as the navigation or the apps or the story, the editorialized content, etc. So that way you disseminate also the roles and responsibilities using a central platform, which is really powerful. Reach employees via Teams and Viva. Tetra Pak uses Teams very efficiently. I congratulate them actually for that. It's a challenge because Teams, it has a different approach to collaboration. What does that mean? Let me give you real life examples maybe. If you're familiar with WhatsApp, and let's say you had a trip to Cancun, and I gave this example last night, some of you will remember. Maybe you shared those photos with someone, and if it was 2 weeks ago, you can go ahead and find them, right? You will remember with whom you talked to or which group. But if it was last year, good luck finding them, right? You cannot find them so easily. Whereas, although it's not popular anymore, like Facebook, if you have an album in Facebook from 2001, you have the context. You know where it was. Maybe you will want to take a look at those Colombia trip pictures, and you know where to find it. So you have the horizon, and that is a synchronous collaboration. So Teams has a synchronous one, and the challenge is if you onboard someone new, all those conversations that you have previously, all of those, let's say, conversation windows, etc., they're not accessible to everyone. So how are you expecting to engage those newcomers as well? Whereas if you have a more, let's say, structured collaboration space where you have the taxonomy, the folksonomy, the document library, the image library, all of that will enable you to work out loud. And this is a very maybe fancy term, but it does make a lot of sense. If you just started to work, where do you look at? Especially if you're working from home. You cannot just, elbow someone and say, hey, can you just teach me how to do that? So you're gonna need to look in those collaboration spaces. And that is why having that structure is very important. And reach your workers where they are. This is again maybe a digital signage example, is a fitting one. So you have a centralized content management system in Appspace that allows you to create beautiful content. And to be honest with you, it's quite similar to how LinkedIn has the content management system, because everybody can write an article on LinkedIn. In fact, it's kind of scary because people feel more comfortable now on LinkedIn than on Facebook. People don't share their lives anymore on Facebook. They're like, oh, people will judge me. But on LinkedIn, you see people talking about their dogs, how they didn't go to work today because they didn't feel like it. So how did they achieve that ease, that comfort? The answer is there, CMS. It's frictionless. It's super easy. Even an idiot like me can create an article in like 2 minutes, because I don't need to think about the font, the color, the look and feel. It's already done. So those extra steps, the decisions, I don't need to make them anymore. It's already done. So we have the same approach. And plus, creating an article, let's say using our CMS, now you can target it also on digital signages. So everything is centralized. And this is the real power. I was talking to another colleague last night, and I heard that they create an article on, let's say they're on intranet CMS, and they somehow duplicate it and try to have it displayed on the digital signage. And it's the double work, and sometimes it gets forgotten, and you lose the entire control over who sees what. So it's definitely a problem, and we tackle it, let's say, with a centralized approach. So create engaging content and make sure it gets seen. Again, using our CMS, it's a good example. Language support is also very important, having an auto-translate function, or let's say the governance layer, the work flow for approval, or having ghostwriters or co-writers. Really, really cool features that you definitely need. And we also dispose of these. And again, consider the in-office experience. Be it desktop, be it wayfinding, space reservation, that holistic approach. And finally, the product that you will have, or the environment that you will have, is going to be a true omni-channel, where you are able to decide on who sees what, how they see it, in which language they see it, who creates that content, how did you decide, how did you give that, let's say, power to them, all of that in a centralized way. And that is what we do so well. So you will be able to reach your colleagues in the front line, reach them in the, let's say, break room or the lunch room, and you will not need to be looking for another solution if you have Appspace. So that's all on me. Thanks a lot for listening. I'm happy to receive your questions.
A question over there.
Hi, great presentation. So one of the messages you touched upon was the importance to create relevant content.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your recommendations in terms of really upskilling the content creators to create relevant content that is for the employees?
Mm-hmm. First, I would say the governance. You decide, or you need a method to disseminate the roles. Who's going to be a writer? Who's the editor? Who's the reader? So those things, those aspects in the governance, they play a very important role on, let's say, channeling the right information and targeting it to the right people. And for targeting, again, you need the right facility. We have a function that we call audiences, for example, that is based on your Azure AD, so that you can have that function and target everything inside the product. Whereas SharePoint, for example, it forces you to create the content first and then somehow find, let's say, the right target. And SharePoint has very powerful tools, but that information structure, it's a very complex one, so it is a real challenge. So those two things. And thirdly, like I explained, you need to have a frictionless CMS. You don't need to be forced to decide which template you will use, which color, which font. You want to create an album, how is it going to be presented? iframe, do I need to care about that? HTML, all of those extra steps, the more you remove those, let's say, friction elements, the easier it is both to create content and encourage people to create beautiful content and, let's say, make it consumed in the right way, display it to the right people.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. I actually have a quick question, because you talked a lot about the frontline workers, of course, a lot of them not having their laptops with them, some of them being literally in the front line, maybe in a mine or somewhere in a retail space.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they rely heavily on mobile phones or iPads, etc. So how do you actually make sure that they have the capacity to engage?
Mm-hmm.
It's doable. Of course, I reckon the UI is very well adapted to these devices. But a lot of times they don't have the time because I'm actually engaging with maybe a customer or something. How do I still reach my employees then when they actually have a physical attendance somewhere that they can't stay away from?
Well, that's a good question, and I think the most important thing is to create the need for them to use it.
Right.
If you have your HR policy being visible in the employee app or the mobile app, plus, let's say, some collaboration information that they will need to see, and some relevant top-down information about what is going on in the office or the local branch, they will be forced to use it in a nice way. So let's say in the morning they are commuting to their workplace, and the first thing they will do is going to be to check their phone, which is actually what I do. And it's funny, we actually put a coffee cup to the place where you see the news of the company, let's say the top-down information, and I often happen to have a coffee in my hand and checking those news. So, because I knew that what I see will be relevant for me, to my role, to my department, and it's not only about formal business stuff either. Like I said, maybe the latest meeting that we had in France, I want to see the pictures, and that is the way the internal comms display that information. So it's also somehow engaging, and it really endorses that engagement to the culture that you're trying to build.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, one over there.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. You're talking about communication, internal communication, news feed to the audience. And I'm a little bit, I haven't seen anything around content curation in form of data management and information management and records management, which is part of the digital workplace, if you want to.
You mean statistics?
No, I'm talking more about content collaboration in sense of we are drafting a report, a technical report maybe. How does that fit into this modern ecosystem?
Great question. I actually would like to show it in a live environment. I will be in the conference room also afterwards, happy to show the actual product, because this is all talk and slides, and I don't like slides so much. But the answer to the question is, we have a full-blown news feed, and it's really close to what Facebook and Twitter has to offer. But it's not social for social's sake. It's to encourage people to collaborate. So everybody will have a personalized news feed. And if we happen to onboard you as a customer, we would, for example, have a community called, what is your company again? Sorry?
I work for NATO.
NATO, wow, that would be a good one. So, so we would have a community called NATO, and let's say my colleague from the design team, they will be a member of it. Myself, the designated customer success manager, they will be members. So the collaboration would happen inside there, and since it has all of the tools that you will need, from let's say surveys, polls, etc., but also the whole integration with the Microsoft suite, Excel files, documents, etc., you can literally attach a document and tag a, let's say, I don't know, the design team, head of design team, and say, hey, can you check this design that we have created and make the amendments? Then they will receive a notification inside the intranet, and they will be able to see it, and okay, maybe they will say, I also need Josh, he also needs to take a look, so he will tag him as well. And think about this happening inside the intranet. And the other example is the emails. So you will need to send maybe 4 or 5 emails, and each time X file version 1. It didn't work, they didn't like it, version 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead of that, you have a fully synchronous document that lives inside SharePoint, and it's updated automatically for everyone, visible to everyone who needs to see it, because we also have that privacy layer. And you don't need emails anymore, and that information is recorded, and it will stay for a longer time. But I'm actually happy to show you that in action if you have a short, let's say, moment. Any other questions? Okay, I think that rounds it up. Thanks a lot for your attention. Happy to talk to you later on.
Thank you.